Before we get started with the video, I have 3 new merch offerings that are available at the time of this video being published and the time that you're watching this that I want to go over with you guys. So we have new hoodies and shirts as well as hats. So we'll start over with the hats. We have the Fabrication Distressed Dad Hat. This is a nice quality hat, nice quality embroidering with some nice little distressed marks all around it, and fits nice. It's high quality fabric and very, very nice hat with one of my favorite words and favorite meanings behind it embroidered on the front of it. Beyond that, we have the BPA beanie, and both of these hats are available in 3 colors. They are black, blue, and gray for each hat, and albeit the colors are a little bit different between them, those are the 3 color offerings. So all of the BPA beanies have an embroidered BPA logo with green stitching, and again, nice quality beanie, nice and thick, nice and soft. Everything is good with both of these, and I'm very impressed with the quality of them. And last but not least, we have what I call the creative cycle hoodies and shirts. This is obviously a hoodie, but everything that I do here, everything that I've built kind of all follows this same circle or same cyclic pattern. You start with an imagination, where you imagine the thing you're going to build, you design it, you create it, and then the circle or the cycle starts all over again. So I thought this was a pretty neat representation of the way that the creative mind works, the way that all these projects work, and I'm sure you guys that are deep into projects the same way that I am can attest to the accuracy of this. So all of these are available now on the website, and the hoodies I forgot to mention are available in black and navy blue as well. So if any of these designs speak to you, feel free to go on the website under the new soft goods category, and you can pick your hats, you can pick your shirts, your beanies, your hoodies, anything along those lines. And I have more products on the way if none of these speak to you. But with all of that being said, let's go ahead and get started with the actual video. Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. So today we are going to continue working on the interior of the Supra, and what we're going to focus on is the battery box. So in the last video I went ahead and I put the interior panels that I had back in the car, and I did a little bit of work on the battery box in the form of just notching this corner and getting it ready to go in its home. But we actually need to do the modifications to the box, to the car, to have the battery be retained in place and to get the battery box just wrapped up. So the first thing that we need to do in this order of operations is to put the studs in place that actually hold the battery in place. So I have everything here needed to do it. I have the battery there. I have the battery bracket, which this just sits over top of it, kind of like so. I have the 2 studs, which I had to modify the studs, as these are 3/8 24 threads here, and I had to convert the bottom side to 3/8 16, as I could not get riv nuts. I couldn't find riv nuts that are 3/8 24, and I may just have been looking in the wrong places, but I wasn't able to come up with them, and I wasn't going to put a whole lot of effort into searching. So over here we have 3/8 24 riv nuts, the 3/8 24 riv nut mandrel, and my Astro Tools riv nut tool. And what we're going to do to start is place the battery in here, place the studs in with the battery and the battery bracket. Take a hammer, hit the top of the studs to mark out where the holes need to be drilled on the inside of the battery box. Drill those, then I can mark out on the car where I need to drill and put the riv nuts. So this should be pretty smooth and pretty seamless. I just have to make sure that I get the battery centered in the box, get the bracket centered, get everything located where I want it, and then it should be smooth sailing from there. Both of the studs in place. I put the actual hold down bracket on just to make sure that everything fits, and it obviously does. And now we need to go ahead and put the actual vent hose in the battery box going down somewhere out of the car. So batteries can off-gas hydrogen gas, and that can create a fire and or explosion hazard. So what I'm going to do is take this piece of tubing, piece of hose that the battery box came with, and run it probably somewhere in this flat right here, looping down and going out of the car somewhere down in this corner. That'll keep it kind of out of sight, out of mind, and I'll put it as close up to the top of the box as I can, so that way it's venting off of the top of this box, and all should be well, all should be happy. So I need to pull this back apart now that I've test fit everything, and then drill a hole, put the hose in, figure out where it's going to run, so on and so forth. And we'll have 2 holes, 2 grommets, and a tube running in between them that'll allow the flammable gases to get out of the way. So now that we have all of the modifications to the battery box done, at least as far as things going in, things coming out of it, we now need to figure out how to mount the lid to the box itself. And that's where this piece of aluminum sheet metal comes in. So these boxes come with hardware when you initially order them. However, I have no idea where my hardware went to, so we're going to come up with a new mounting solution and a new way to do this that will be just as effective as what Moroso had for it, if not even more effective. So what I'm going to do is on the bottom sides of these flanges right here, I'm going to cut a piece of aluminum that will match the contour of this right here. I'll rivet probably 4 rivets, 3 or 4 rivets on the long sides, and then 2 rivets on these narrower sides. And that will allow me to put riv nuts in. So this will be held on with 2, 4, 6 thumb screws, which I have these leftover thumb screws from another project, but they aren't quite the correct dimension for this, so I'll end up having to get other ones. But I can at least get these rails built, get them fastened onto here, get the rib nuts put in, all of that, and get this thing to the point where it's ready for the correct fasteners to be used on it, and all will be well. Well, after a little bit of finessing and grinding and just tailor fitting, the lid goes onto the box. All is well here, and the only thing that's left to do with the box at this point is to put some sort of a layer of rubber or foam or something along those lines on the bottom of it, just to pad the battery from the fastener heads that actually bolt the box down to the car. But what we can do now is take the box back over to the car, put it back in place, make sure that the lid can be reinstalled in the car just in case anything moves around or does anything funny. And if all is well there, then I'll go ahead and order the piece of rubber and get this battery box completely squared away, and then can move on to some other things. Well, everything fit back here absolutely perfectly. All the fasteners went in. The box sits where it needs to. The two studs, they sit where they need to. And like I said, the only thing that is outstanding with this battery box at this point in time is just that little bit of an isolator, a little bit of rubber that will sit in the bottom of it. But I need to get out of here for today, so I'm going to do just that. And when we pick the video up again, have some pretty interesting stuff and pretty cool parts that we'll get to building a mount for and get to installing. So as I'm sure you could tell by that little bit of B-roll right there, we are going to work on gauges today. So initially I thought about trying to integrate like the fuel level and I guess just the fuel level into the race pack. But the more that I thought about it, the more that it would be simpler for me and I'd have a better idea of the way that the whole system works kind of copaesthetically if I just ran two auxiliary external gauges. So that's exactly what we're going to do. So I ordered odometer gauges. I've had really good luck with them in the past, as I'm sure many of you have as well. And I have digital cobalt gauges, albeit there's only one here right now, as the GPS speedometer is still somewhere in transit or fulfillment. But we can at least get the gauge cups mounted, put in their locations, and I guess I can wire in and get the fuel level gauge all squared away. So I'll need to go on the inside of the car here and figure out where exactly they're going to be located. And I have a couple of different options, but I think what I would like to do, I don't even know if I can do what I want to do. I don't know. Let me play around with a few options first, and then once I decide exactly what we're going to do, then I can describe it to you guys and we can get started actually implementing that idea and that plan. So, sitting here in the car, I think I figured out how I'm going to mount these gauges, how they're going to be oriented, how all of it's going to work together. So, over here, off of the cage, I think the speedometer is going to sit something along those lines. And that puts it in a nice heads-up location. As I'm going down the road, I can very quickly and easily reference the vehicle speed, which is pretty important, especially if I have the police officer or something behind me that is more than likely clocking my speed. I want to make sure that I'm on the up and up and not going to get pulled over, or I'll have the least chance as possible, least chance of getting pulled over as possible, I should say. Now the fuel level gauge, it isn't as important as the speedometer, and I don't need it to be heads up, so I think I'm going to try to mount in this little pocket down here. So it's kind of tight confines, but I think that's a decent location for it to keep it kind of out of sight, out of mind, while still being easily able to quickly glance down at it and see what the actual fuel level is. So I'm going to think about it for a few more minutes to see if any better ideas pop into my head, but at least right now, that's the rough game plan for this. And I guess in the next segment of this video, you'll see exactly what I decided to do, and we'll go from there. And a little while later, we are here in the car, and my gauge is exactly where I wanted it to be, and everything is going well. So that's where I wanted it to sit, and you can see this is roughly my vantage point as far as my line of sight goes, and I can quickly glance down a little bit just to see what the fuel level is. And since this is not a gauge that's extremely crucial, it's more of just a creature comfort, I didn't need it directly in my line of sight like I would for engine vitals on the race pack or vehicle speed on the speedometer when that can go on here. So now that this gauge is in place, I also hooked up the flying lead to it, and I have the wiring instructions right here. So I can go ahead now and start actually wiring this thing in. And thankfully, this gauge comes from the factory set up for a 0 to 90 ohm fuel sending unit, which is exactly what's in the rear of this thing. So should hopefully be pretty easy. And it's just a handful of wires. 12 volt ground, 12 volt dash lighting, fuel sender, and let's see. The black and brown wires are not used since this is a 0 to 90 ohm GM sensor, a GM sending unit. So it should be pretty easy, but I'm going to go get some lunch, get back from that, and then get to wiring all of this in. Well, I've made some good progress on at least getting the wires roughly strung out. And I also went ahead and mounted the speedometer interface module right here. This is obviously the wiring side, this is the antenna side, and I have the antenna mounted in the back of the car, but we're not going to focus on the speedometer right now, since I don't have the actual gauge in my possession. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to exert effort for that when I could work on the fuel gauge that I actually have everything here for. So what I'm doing right now is a test, and if the test goes well, then tomorrow I can go ahead and actually wire all this together. But what I've done is I took the harness for the sending unit off, drilled a hole in the sheet metal, put a grommet in place, and have the plug here. The purple wire is the signal going to the gauge. The green wire is a ground. And in a moment I'll pull the battery over here, and I'll hook up this green ground wire as well as the red and black power and ground wires that are off of the gauge harness over there, if you guys can see. And if all of that works, then hopefully this thing will power up and will give us some sort of percentage reading as far as the fuel level in the tank. If not, then I'll have some other things to figure out, but fingers crossed that this works, and I'll go ahead and set you guys on a tripod, and we can give this a test and see just how it works or just how it doesn't work. I can see a blue light reflecting on the side of the seat, and I also see something blinking right now. So I guess let me go ahead and tape this stuff together and then I can get a better idea of what's actually going on. Alright, so the gauge is saying that we have no fuel, which is incorrect. So I don't know if I need to calibrate this or what, but I'll go ahead and read and then we'll see. Alright, I think I got it sorted out. So I have the sending unit pulled out back here so I can tip it around, and right now it is sitting with the plunger completely at the bottom. So if I tip it over, so the fuel level would be going up, you can see the numbers start to climb, going up, and we reach 100%. So see if I can gently let the plunger go back down. There you see the level starts to fall. I have it a little bit above 0% now. There you go. So I got it working. I think that the fuel level in the tank is just low enough where it was causing a little bit of a problem getting a reading with it. So I figured out why the fuel sending unit was not reading. And that is because, I'm not sure if you guys will be able to see it. Probably not, but I'll give it my best shot. As was said in an old movie, I can't remember the name of it, we don't got no gas. Yeah, the fuel level is low enough in this thing where it isn't reading. So I'll need to go and get more fuel, and I'm glad that I know that now. Otherwise, I could have gotten stuck somewhere with this thing. But I'll get some more fuel, put it in here, test everything again, and since we know the sending unit works in correlation with that gauge, everything will be good and everything should work fine. So I'm going to put this back together, get out of here for today, and then tomorrow I can come in and actually wire this gauge up, get some more fuel, test everything out, and all will be well. So it's a little bit later today, but I can't wait to get this wiring done, so I'm going to try to knock this gauge harness out in a relatively quick manner, and hopefully I don't end up regretting that decision. So let's go ahead and start working on some of this wiring harness. So I guess I'll start with the fuel level gauge, and I have my nice loom here. This is expanding loom. If you guys can see that right there, it has like an accordion type deal to it, where I guess it's kind of like a Chinese finger trap. So none of this needs to be resistant to chemicals or abrasion or really anything like that. So there's no reason to get Raychem DR25 or an equivalent. This expandable finger trap loom works perfectly fine. So we'll use that, and it'll still be a nice harness by the time everything is said and done. Well, the inside of the Supra is a wiring disaster zone right now, but the fuel level gauge is wired in, made this little harness right here, and pulled power and ground off of existing spots right here. So if I kick the main power on, the fuel level gauge comes on. It's at 0 because I ended up not getting fuel today, and I need to wire in this white wire still, but I'm going to wait to do that, as this is essentially the nighttime trigger, and it lights up another portion of the gauge that I'll show here in a moment. And I'm going to wait to wire that in, as with the speedometer, there's a possibility that I could tie that wire, the speedometer wire, into this harness as well, just to make everything a little bit more consolidated and a little bit simpler. And this purple wire here is the signal from this little GPS interface down here that will go up to that GPS speedometer as well. So let me see if I can do this. So if you pay attention to where it says fuel, and I guess I can just apply 12 volts to this. Let's see. There, you see the bottom of it lights up as well. And I can kind of ram jam this thing in place. There, I have it resting on the parking light. So when I turn the lights on, that will light up as well. So, like I said, I'll need to tie that in once I get the speedometer, and I can hopefully be able to tie the speedo back in with this, but I'll have to wait until that comes in and I can see exactly what needs to happen. So, with another project in the books, and well, I guess partially in the books, as I wasn't able to work on the speedometer, but at least the fuel level gauge works, and the battery box is squared away at this point. And off camera, I went ahead and put the vent tube going down underneath of the car and all of that. So that's all squared away, and the one of the two gauges is squared away, and the other one shouldn't be any trouble to put together either. So pretty successful. This is a pretty successful episode with these few projects, and it's the little things like this, the little creature comforts, that make a build feel complete. So without this, I mean, before I was pouring fuel through a false floor in the back of it, and now I have everything to fill the car up with fuel like a normal factory Supra, and I have a fuel level gauge that will tell me the actual level in the tank. So it might not be a big deal to some of you, but for me that's a pretty big thing, and it makes me pretty happy. So I think we're going to end it off there for this one, and hopefully I have my speedometer in the next episode, and even if that hasn't arrived yet, I have another big part on the way for this thing that should be the last big ticket item and the last big thing to be installed on this before it's time to go on the dyno and actually see how much power this thing can make. So we have that coming up in the very near future, and frankly I can't wait to see what this thing does. After all this time and the trials and tribulations and figuring out how different systems work and everything else, to actually put all of it into practice and put my money where my mouth is to see how much power this thing makes, or if the engine I put together blows up, if something breaks, it's the best litmus and stress test that you can put a car through, at least initially. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and wrap this one up. So thank you guys, as always, for tuning in, for your support, for your kind words, for your orders with the merch stuff and with manifolds and everything else. You guys are awesome, and you allow me to do the things that I want to do, and hopefully you're still having fun and still enjoying coming along on these journeys with me, because I know that I'm sure still having fun doing all this stuff. So don't forget that we have new hats, we have new hoodies, and all of the other pre-existing merch is all available on bpautosports.net under the soft goods section on the nav bar on the top of the website. So the website is linked in the description below. Feel free to go on there, browse through, see if any of the apparel items or any of the parts that I have speak to you. And if not, hopefully there is something in the future that is more up your alley. But with all of that being said, that'll be the end of this one. So, as always, be sure to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.